My wife cheated on me and now she's paying the price. I was passing the time in a quaint little import store a stone's throw from Piccadilly Circus in the heart of London. I wasn't looking for anything, just browsing the curiosities displayed in the window. "Hello, Michael." I heard a familiar female voice softly call out a name no one had addressed me by in a long time. I turned and found myself in brown eyes that still found a way to make my heart race. It's amazing the gamut of feelings that can sweep over you in a split second. I felt a flutter in my chest, surprise, confusion, a desire to embrace this woman, and finally, cold bitterness. I stared at her for what seemed like about 10 minutes, but probably less than 10 seconds. "Hello, Gretchen, what a surprise." I went back to watching, not really wanting to engage in conversation with her, but knowing full well that it couldn't be avoided. Gretchen, I knew, would never leave things alone. "Do you have a few minutes to chat? I'll let you buy the girl some coffee and we can talk," Gretchen suggested teasingly. "I don't think so, Gretchen." "I have time, but I'm not sure we have anything to talk about," I stated emphatically. I wasn't interested in being polite to the woman who had ruined my life. I knew she would persevere, but she would have to work for it. I heard a quiet sigh and then, "Please, Michael, I'd really like to talk to you and I'll get some coffee." I stared at her dumbly for a moment, but then gave up. "Okay, but call me Mike. I'm not called Michael anymore." She rolled her eyes slightly and stated with a touch of arrogance, "I think I've earned the right to call you Michael if I want to." "Okay, Pookie, have it your way," I replied. She was visibly shocked that I was using the long-buried, affectionate address I used when we were together. On happier days, I would teasingly approach her from behind, hugging and caressing her. I always said in a whiny voice, "Come upstairs, Pookie, and give me some love. I'm needy, Pookie. I must have you." Invariably, she would cringe and giggling say, "Get away from me, asshole. You're not getting any love until I'm ready. Go take a cold shower, asshole." Often, these one-act plays would devolve into me playfully chasing her around the house or spraying her with me from the kitchen sprayer. It was all fun, and we both loved it. Those were good times. She got really excited and thought for a second. "You're right, Mike," she said softly with sadness in her voice. I was surprised by her reaction and sensed that there was much more behind this surrender than could be explained in words. She briskly approached the counter and spoke to the owner in a language I had no idea about. The little Asian woman behind the counter looked at me, nodded somewhat solemnly, and then bowed, inviting us into a small coffee bar at the back of the store. There were 2 small tables in front of the bar, surrounded by wicker chairs. We chose a table, sat down, and the smiling woman brought us 2 coffees. Without even thinking, Gretchen chose the chair facing the bar and the wall, while I went around the table and took the chair facing the door. Muscle memory doesn't forget. It was a ritual we'd practiced thousands, maybe millions of times in 24 years of marriage. I had to face the door. It was a nervous tick left over, if you will, from my time serving in Vietnam. After all this time, we still stuck to our rituals. I think we both noticed it, judging by the curious half-smile that appeared on Gretchen's pretty face. We sat in silence for a long time, and despite my best efforts, my thoughts returned to the last time I'd seen this beautiful woman, my ex-wife. We lived in a small town in Connecticut, and I considered us a happily married couple. For months, my wife seemed distant. I saw and talked to her every day, but I felt a rift developing between us. I tried to ignore it and redoubled my efforts to attract her and bring her close to me again, to make her happy. Our 2 children had left home by then, trying to establish themselves in their new roles as adults. Brett, our son and oldest, was 23 years old and had just graduated from college. His senior year of high school, he married a sweet girl named Amy, whom everyone adored. He and Amy worked in New York City and commuted by train to their small townhouse in New Jersey. They had made some progress and were deeply in love with each other. It was beautiful to see. The second child was our fiery daughter, Misty, who turned 21. She is the apple of my eye, that's Daddy's girl, and our wild child. I held my breath most of the time while she was in school. However, by her second year of college, she finally realized that all the no's we were heaping on her were for her own good, and she has calmed down and will soon be finishing her undergraduate degree, making the dean's list more than once. So there you go. I was editing an article that was going to appear in one of the magazines published by my employer when I got a call from my wife. "Hey, Michael, it's Gretchen. Would you like to have lunch with me today? I know it's really soon, but I thought it would be fun to do something different for a change." I was thrilled. "Sure, babe. That sounds like a great idea. I'm glad you called. Do you have some place in mind, or should I pick?" "Meet me at Café Paris in, say, 45 minutes. Is that okay with you?" Gretchen asked in a professional, measured tone. It felt like the distance hadn't been traveled yet, but at least it was a start. I was beyond excited and really hoped for a warming of our relationship. "I'll be there with bells on. Maybe I should wear something else?" I said, giggling, trying to lighten the atmosphere and show how excited I was. "Yes, please," she replied, not very cheerfully. "Okay, I'll see you at 12:15. Thanks, babe, that's a great idea. I love you," I said, getting up from the table and reaching for my jacket with a wide grin on my face. She simply said, "Okay, I'll see you in a little while." I hurried to my car and drove across town to meet my favorite wife for lunch. I cannot describe the delight I felt at this simple gesture on her part. When I walked in, she was sitting at the table with a glass of wine. I touched her shoulder and leaned over to kiss her. She turned her head slightly and gave me a peck on the cheek. I guess that should have told me something. I said, "Hey, gorgeous, looking for a date?" smiling stupidly. She smirked slightly and said, "Let's order so we can have more time to talk afterward." We ordered, and she started talking about some translation projects she was working on at International Trade, Inc., an import and export company where she worked as a language specialist. I ate and listened to her, but I started to feel a little awkward. She hardly touched her food. After the dishes were put away, she paid the bill with her business credit card, saying that everything was fine and that her boss knew she was treating me to lunch. For a while, she stared at the floor and was silent. I was about to ask what was wrong when she looked me in the eye and said, "Michael, I can't say it any easier, so... Michael, I've been having an affair for about 8 months now. I love him, and I want a divorce." I was stunned, shocked, and destroyed all in one voice. I stared at her in silence and couldn't speak. My world was torn in half in an instant. Never in my life, not even during the war, had I been so shocked. I was broken in the very depths of my soul. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. Everything was lost. I was lost. She went on to tell me that he was very wealthy, a billionaire in fact, and that he would take care of all the costs of the divorce. Because he is so rich, she would not claim anything in the divorce. I will be able to keep everything. I seem to remember her saying something about my little estate staying intact. At the word property, she made a disgusted gesture with quotes in the air. I knew what she was saying, but I couldn't really hear anything. It was as if I was in a tunnel where I could see my wife's lips moving, but I couldn't hear a sound. All the words were like bells ringing for my doom. Then she continued, "This is what I really want, Michael, and it's in our mutual interest if you don't resist. Fighting it will only prolong the agony, but the result will be the same. I'm leaving for Europe with him tonight and won't be back anytime soon. At least not until the divorce is final. Please let it happen without interference. You have always been interested in my happiness, and this is something that will make me very happy. I'll call the children when I'm settled in Paris. I don't know how they will take it, but you needn't worry about it." With that little speech, she got up and walked out of my life. and I sat there not believing what had just happened. The kids, as it turned out, didn't take it very well. They were just as stunned and hurt as I was. She never called them, and I had to break the news to them. I was effectively accused of killing her and disposing of her body. The months following my wife's passing were horrible. My children and I fought fiercely, soul-searching what we had done to cause this and exchanging accusations. I was able to get the name and some information about Gretchen's beau from her office. I then began searching the internet for pictures or articles about him. Fortunately, I was able to find a couple of pictures of him with a glowing Gretchen in his arms taken after her departure, so that put an end to speculation that I had something to do with her disappearance. Interestingly, none of the photos mentioned her, even though several people were listed in the captions. Apparently, they were trying to keep their home life private. After about a year, I was able to get my new life together and began to take an interest in life again. During this time, I became friends with a few select employees of Gretchen's former employer. I found out that upper management not only knew about Gretchen's affair, but also covered for her. It seems that some of her beau's companies provided a lot of work and products for international trade, so they thought it was in their best interest to make him happy. They even sent out memos to some employees advising them to keep things quiet and ignore what was going on. Gretchen's affair took place during work hours, on company time. Can you say lawsuit? Yes, I sued them. Now I'm living quite comfortably off them. I don't get my pound of flesh from Gretchen or her handsome boyfriend, but I don't mind making the guilty party feel my pain. It had been 3+ years since our last lunch, and I found myself sitting at a community table across from my beautiful ex-wife. She still looked very beautiful. The best clothes, hair, and makeup that money could buy, but there was weariness and sadness in her eyes. Those soulful brown eyes of hers, which I had always adored, told me nothing. She seemed to be dead inside. When she was happy or excited, those eyes would dance, flash, and sparkle with life. Today, the fire had gone out. Apparently, happiness was still eluding her. "You're looking good, Mike. Slimmed down and more muscular," she started the conversation. "Thanks," I said simply. This was her show. She wanted it and she could run it. "I can't believe we actually ran into each other in London. What are the odds?" she continued. "Yeah, it's hard to believe," I parried. "In my new position, I'm doing a lot of translating, and I've even learned a couple new languages," she continued, trying to find an open seat. "I've always been struck by that about you. You're a very talented and beautiful woman," I finally revealed. She suddenly lowered her eyes and wept. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't get any recognition these days. I'm not sure anyone even knows I'm alive." "I would have thought your husband would be putting you on display." "He never married me. I'm just a sex toy that can speak several languages. If he wants to make a good impression on someone, he takes me outside to show them a good time and talk to them in their language." A 40-year-old American woman who can speak more than English, can show people anything, and is willing to have sex is rare, I think. "I've become a prize cheater," she said sadly. "What? Why don't you leave? Get on the nearest plane and get the hell out of Dodge," I objected hotly. "It's all very complicated. I live very, very well, but I'm being watched all the time. It would be very difficult for me to leave. I can only talk to you now because we met by chance and I didn't leave the store. Besides, Marika, the store owner, is a friend of mine, and she kind of has my back if I need to hide for a while." "Sounds awful, but I guess that's your choice. Okay, let's change the subject. Why didn't you ever call the kids? I had a very hard time convincing them that I didn't kill you or dispose of your body. They were very upset that they hadn't heard from you." I demanded answers now. She only seemed to sink deeper into sadness. "I wasn't allowed to. I left that afternoon on a private jet, and access to my former life was completely closed to me. Like I said, I'm being watched all the time." She suddenly leaned forward and looked directly at me. Michael, I can't tell you how many nights I lay alone in a big house in an exotic place and wish I was still lying next to you in our home in Connecticut. God, how I miss you and us. I could feel myself reverting back to an old habit, fixing everything so Gretchen would be happy. I saw myself being pulled back in and froze. Wait, wait, I said, raising my hands in a sign of surrender. I can't fix your life for you. More than that, I don't want to fix your life. How dare you sit here and whine about your life? You did this. You chose to do this. Lots of people I love dearly have to live and deal with the situation you created for them. It was not what they wanted or chose for themselves. Their lives have been forever changed because of choices and decisions that you made without their consent or involvement. I happened to run into you for the first time in 3 years, and already it's all about you. I'm already tired of it. You know you still haven't asked about your children? What kind of mother does that? For your information, you're a grandmother now. Brett and Amy have a cute little girl who's gonna be 2 in a couple months. If you're interested, her name is Brianna Lynn. Your daughter Misty, remember her? She's planning on marrying a really nice guy named Trevor in about 6 months. She's still hoping you'll be at the wedding, but it's very difficult when we have no address or way to contact you. Maybe I'll send an invitation here. I started to hyperventilate, so I paused, but I was on edge. All my pent-up anger and resentment was bursting out. As for me, what did I deserve to be treated like this? I loved you with everything I am and everything I had, and you left me without even saying goodbye. Do you realize you never apologized for ruining my life? Don't sit there and whine. You ruined everything. Are you looking for a shoulder to cry on? You're not gonna do that here. You killed that privilege 3 years ago in a little cafe in Connecticut. I was about to get up and leave, just as she had 3 years ago, when an angelic voice with a distinctly English accent broke into the heated gloom. Mike, I can't leave you alone for even 5 minutes without you chatting up some hottie. I swear I have to beat you to a pulp, she joked, trying to look angry, but her green eyes flashed with whimsy. I was so engrossed in my tirade that I didn't even notice Pamela walk in. I smiled warmly and said, Hi, baby. Pamela, I'd like you to meet Gretchen, my ex-wife. Gretchen, this is my friend Pamela. Gretchen was still reeling from my verbal assault, and now her replacement was standing in front of her. She remained silent and tried to maintain control of herself. Pamela simply extended her hand in the traditional friendly gesture and said, smiling, I'm very pleased to meet you, Gretchen. Mike has often mentioned you, but not very affectionately, I'm afraid. I suppose I should thank you for letting this handsome man go and giving me a chance to get a grip on him. He can be quite a nuisance, but I am gradually accustoming him to the house. Pamela looked at me and smiled broadly. She stroked my shoulder affectionately and continued. Mike, my crazy Yankee, I'm afraid we have to get going if we want to catch the train to Ely. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm worried about the time. I patted her leg and said, Don't worry, my dear, I'm just finishing up. Then I turned to the still struggling Gretchen and said, We have to run, but thanks for the coffee and the time we spent together. I'll tell the kids you say hi for me and tell them you said you love them, even if it's a bit of a lie. I shook her hand and then said, I hope, Gretchen, you find your happiness someday, but I think you're looking in the wrong place. Thank you also for 23 good years. They've been mostly happy years for me, and I'm grateful for that. Goodbye, Gretchen. Gretchen continued to sit with a shocked look, just as I had 3 long years ago. Pamela and I traveled to bustling London to meet the appointed train. She never asked about the reunion, but I think she heard enough to know it was not a joyous reunion. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Yes, I felt free and even a little happy. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!